So we end today this journey of Jonah. And we've looked, so if you're coming in, maybe this is your first Sunday, and maybe you're just tuning in online, by the way. We've been on this track for, a couple of months, looking at the life of Jonah. And so we've looked at different themes. We've looked at compassion as found in every chapter. We've looked at the fear of death and dying things in every chapter. And so as we close this book out, you could see something bizarre in every chapter, to be honest with you, something way out of the ordinary. I mean, when is the last fishing trip you ever had? And the storm came up and somebody jumped off, and all of a sudden it became super calm. That's just very unusual, if you would agree with me. Then of course the swallowing of Jonah in a great fish, that happens every day. It just happened to me last Thursday. I was out swimming in the ocean. And then, of course, the fish vomits him up, and he survives 3 days and all those things. And then he goes to Nineveh, and there's a great revival. I mean, sometimes when you look at the revivals in history of people like George Whitefield and Finney and Wesley, not everybody came to God. Not everybody turned their heart to Christ. Well, they did in Nineveh. It was bizarre. I mean, it was out of the ordinary that every single person. I mean, I think if you read the story carefully, I think even the cows were repenting. I think, the king of Nineveh, the president, the prime minister, the head honcho stepped down from his throne. How bizarre is that? What if you turned on your news channel today and you saw every senator, every administrator in the White House, every House of Representative, a congressperson, every single person, you turn it on and they were all weeping on their knees. I mean, it would be like, wow. It'd be bizarre. It'd be out of the ordinary. Well, the ending is also pretty bizarre, and Jonah's response and to all of this. And so let's just jump into the bizarre ending. So this is what I love about the Bible. The Bible's not like a sitcom where it ends happily every 30 minutes. I'm like, that just worked out. Magna PI, figures out who the killer was every show, Sometimes in the Bible, that's not true. The prodigal son, it ended strangely. That we never see the older brother really turn around like, you know what, you're right. I mean, he's just given his heart to Christ, so wow, I should probably join the party. It doesn't happen that way. We see many stories that makes the Bible authentic because it's not just a string of fables to make us feel good. It is often these real stories that wake us up because we need to be woken up at times. Jonah chapter 4, verse 1. We're going to go through the whole thing. It's a very short chapter. We got this massive revival going on in Nineveh. But Jonah was greatly displeased and became angry. That's bizarre. That's like Billy Graham, is doing a stadium and somebody tells him like, hey, we had 3,714 people to come to Christ. That really ticks me off. I mean, like what? It makes no sense at all, but it is evidence of priority. It is evidence, as we looked at a few weeks ago, that foxhole prayer in the great fish probably wasn't authentic. It was just really this sense of desperation. But what comes out, we're told in the Bible that out of the abundance of the heart comes the words. In other words, we know a person by their fruit. We know his real heart by his emotions right here, super angry. And it just really is bizarre. I don't care if you read this. Jonah was greatly displeased and became angry. You can read it in the original language. You can read it in Spanish. You can read it in Pig Latin. You can read it anything you want. It's bizarre that this guy, seeing people turn to God, even the king, is upset. Verse 2, he prayed to the Lord. Oh Lord, is this not what I said to you when I was still at home, when you called me to go to Nineveh? This is why I was so quick to flee. Still doesn't make sense. Quick to flee to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. It just got more bizarre. I mean, it would make total sense that if God said to Jonah, I want you to go, I want you to preach a message, and I don't care what the response is, I'm going to just burn them to a crisp. I mean, anybody with that point, like, well, it made me just a little bit hesitant to go because I knew that you were just so angry that you're going to let them have it. But to reverse that and what he says is, I knew that you were so compassionate, so forgiving that you would give them a second chance like you gave me, by the way. And for that reason, that's why I ran. It still doesn't make any sense. Only if you understand that he hated the Ninevites. That's the only thing that makes sense. It's like back in Jesus' day, they couldn't stand the Samaritans. That's why when Jesus was talking to a Samaritan, what are you doing talking to her? Not just a male and female in a lonely place, but you're talking to a Samaritan, for heaven's sakes. And there was this deep, embedded hatred for the Ninevites that Jonah said, I knew you were going to have compassion on them. I hate them so much that I'm not going to. Something needed reprioritizing. Would you agree? So he says in verse 3, now, O Lord, I'm ready for suicide, just to put it bluntly. Take away my life, for it's better for me to die than to live. It even got more bizarre. I mean, you're that upset. But the Lord replied, have you any right to be angry? It reminds me of the same question that God asked Cain. You remember before Cain killed Abel? He got so uptight. He was so angry. And God came to him, Genesis chapter 4. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you so angry? Come on, calm down. Why is your face so snarly, downcast? If you do what is right, won't you be accepted? But if you don't do what is right, sin is going to grab your life. It's crouching at the door. It desires to have you, to master you. But you must master it. See, when I'm looking at this, I'm like, man, does this guy need a wake-up call? So some of you know my background's in classical music. And so you learn all about the composers. And one of the composers is Haydn. Maybe you've heard Haydn. Haydn was actually Beethoven's teacher. I don't know if you knew that. But Joseph Haydn. And of all the composers, because a lot of these musicians, man, they led pretty rough lives. You know, they didn't have a lot of wealth, and they were living, hand to mouth, but they loved their art so much. Not Haydn. Haydn was, he was the court musician in a castle, and the prince was Esterhazy. These are all details that are completely boring and unnecessary for this conversation. But he had just kind of a easy life. And so after he finished that job, he moved to London. And he found that the Londoners were a little more sophisticated. And the more sophisticated sometimes a culture is, the colder they become, just quite frankly. As we work around the globe, I'm telling you, the more sophisticated a culture becomes, the more sleepy they become, if I'm just honest with you. And so Haydn was, directing the London Symphony. And in the background, so, the symphony's right here and the audience is here. As he's directing the audience, the symphony, the orchestra, he hears this sound. He goes, what is that sound? And it was like the whole front section was snoring. It literally was the sound of snoring. As he's playing, the orchestra's quiet. They were. So he wrote this symphony. You might recognize it as the Surprise Symphony. If you know anything about classical music, the Surprise Symphony, you recognize the tune. Dun 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 dun. But the way he did it, because he got so ticked off at people sleeping during his concerts, he pulled the orchestra together and goes, okay, boys, here's what we're going to do. When we get to the little boop at the end, dun, 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 and it was like this fortissimo, the loudest note, the orchestra ever played, just to wake up the people who were snoring. It's super interesting. So I'm about to yell for those 3 people who are sleeping at my story about Haydn, Joseph Haydn. Such a gripping story, I know. Sometimes God needs a surprise symphony. Okay, now watch this. You remember in the second chapter, when the fish came along, we were told that God provided the fish. Anybody in their right mind, somebody fell off a boat, it's in the middle of a sea, middle of a storm, and a large fish just took it. Anybody in the right mind is saying, that would come under the not so great column, right? But see, God provided the whale, the big fish. He provided this great fish, right? And so in that, what we see is that sometimes when God provides something, we interpret it as something not good, but it actually is good because of God's provision. I want to remind you of that second chapter. Provision is provision, that he's seeing before you know you need it. God is provisioning what you need. God provision that Jonah just didn't need a lifeboat in the shape of a great fish, but he needed a second chance. And had God not provided the great fish, then he would have died in the ocean, no second chance. See how God kind of looks ahead of things, all right? The story gets pretty bizarre. Jonah, in verse 5, went out, sat down at a place east of the city. Now he's angry, right? Ticked off, frustrated. He made himself a shelter and sat in its shade and waited to see what would happen to the city. See how cynical he is. What do you mean? You should be over there celebrating with them. You should have been the song leader of the revival. I'm just going to sit here and wait and see what happens. Then the Lord, there it is, provided a vine. God's going to provide 4 things. He already provided a fish. Second thing, he's providing a vine. And he made it grow up over Jonah to give him even more shade, because he had this little shelter, to give him even more shade for his head, to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy. Not just happy. Oh, he was exhilarated about a stupid plant. At the same time, ticked off that the entire largest city in the history, in that time of it, the largest city, that everybody had come to the altar call, including the king. Hard to wrap your head around, right? Very happy. And you look at this and like, just one question for you. What are your priorities? What does make you happy? Dun, 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 dun. Hey! Come on, wake up. Because if that makes you happy, if our homes, our cars, our jobs, our income, our 401ks, all those things, our entertainment make us more happy than the people written on the who board back there, that God has called us to intersect, something needs, well, a surprise symphony. An awakening. I need an awakening. You need an awakening, because we live in a sophisticated culture that will lull us all to sleep. There are so many times in our lives, me included, I am at the top of the list of like, I need to reprioritize, God. I need to reprioritize. So God provides something that's bizarre. But at the dawn of the next day, third thing, fish, a plant for shade, God provided a worm, which chewed the vine so it absolutely died. Thanks a lot. Now, I don't know how you feel about worms, but most of the time, that's not a positive thing, but it's even heightened in the context of the worm, right? I'm going to eat my morning cereal. Oh, there's a worm in there. Not a big deal. Oh, that's a big deal. Are you going to go to bed tonight? There's a worm on your pillow. I mean, come on, just think about it. So when I was in 4th grade, I at lunch, we had those little boxes of raisins. And that was like punishment, I think, that your parents would, instead of putting a Snickers bar in there, you put a box of raisins. But, we're eating them. I'm eating this box of raisins. And I'm about halfway through. Be careful, this story includes grossness. I'm halfway through. I look down in the half-eaten box of raisins, and it's crawling with these little worms. We're serving raisins outside, by the way. I didn't eat another raisin, I'm not kidding, for 3 decades. I couldn't look at a raisin, right? There's nothing wrong with worms, but worms in context. Worms in the context of this thing that I was so happy about, and then God took it away because provision. He knew that Jonah needed the worm. Interview Jonah. Say, hey, what do you think about the worm now? Hate the worm. T-shirt, hate the worm. Hashtag, hate worms. Whatever it is. But God said, no, I'm seeing something that you don't see. Now watch. It got worse. God provides the 4th thing. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind. Thank you so much. This is getting great. And the sun blazed on Jonah's head, so he grew faint. He wanted to die. He said the second time, it would be better for me to die in this moment than to live. And God would say, son, this worm, this sun, this scorching wind, it's exactly what you need right now. It's hard to see a loving parent draw rules. It's hard as a parent to draw rules. It's hard as a parent, when you're drawing lines and setting rules, and there's pushback and there's hard words. If you're a parent, you know what I mean. This is not easy for God to send a worm. It's not easy for God to send a scorching wind, blazing sun. It's not easy. But God would not be the parent that he is if he didn't occasionally send a worm. It's a wake-up call. God said to Jonah in verse 9, do you have any right to be angry about the vine that died? And he says, I do. 3rd time, I'm angry enough to die. But the Lord said in verse 10, and this is the clincher. This is the whole clincher of the whole story. Jonah, you've been, watch this word, concerned. You're super concerned. Let me help God out here a little bit about this stupid vine. Though you didn't tend to it, you didn't make it grow, you did nothing. I gave you everything. It sprang up overnight. It died overnight. You had no control over that. But Nineveh, has more than 120,000 people who can't tell their right hand from their left. They can't tell religion and ritual from relationship. They have no concept of who I am. And I gave you the privilege to be concerned about them. They can't tell their right hand from their left, and many cattle as well. There's the word. Should I not be concerned over this city? I tell you, for me, it's just like taking the Bible and like, wow, it comes right into your heart and say, oh God, what are the things that I am happier about than being concerned, the emotion of being concerned over those that need you so desperately? I get happy about a lot. How about you? And it's okay. And we don't have to walk around, beating ourselves in the back, but it's just that reprioritizing. And it's a wake-up call to the things that consume us. So it reminds me of the story as we close this. Remember when Jesus was in the home of Mary and Martha. The story, to be honest with you, has always bothered me. I'm just, because on the workaholic-o-meter, I tend to run high, okay? So it's always kind of ticked me off, this story, because Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. Martha's in the kitchen getting the dinner ready. And Jesus says, Mary's doing the better thing. So I've always, as a workaholic, said, hey, wait a second. Somebody had to fix the dinner. Somebody had to get the grub ready, right? And so why is she getting the bad rap? I mean, should we just all go starving and, eat vanilla wafers or something? And then I began to dig down into the story. And it was like, oh, that's what Jesus is saying is that Martha, what's happened is you created your own mess. What does that mean? When Jesus came in the house, she could have just fixed a simple meal. But oh no, not type A and Martha. She had to do Thanksgiving dinner times 10. She created, we got to have the cranberry sauce, and we got to put those little pickles beside it. And I've got to go find those pickles because we got to have pickles because it's Jesus. And he likes pickles. I don't know if he does or not. I'm just throwing that into the story. Luke 10, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that she had created. It was her doing that had to be made. She came and asked him, Lord, don't you care that my sister left all the work for me to do? Tell her to help me. I love the way when Jesus uses somebody's name twice. He did it with Peter. Martha. Martha. The original language means girl. Just kidding. Girl, take a listen. He's taking her at Martha. Listen to me. Dun, 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 dun. Hey, wake up. You are worried and upset about many things, not just this dinner, about many things. But only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better. It will not be taken from her. You see, when I came out of my office on Wednesday night, this young guy, Danny, is Danny in the room right now? I don't know if Danny comes to the service. Danny is one of the ones that had the referee shirt on. And I'd never met him before. He came over and said, hey, you're Pastor Steve. I'm like, yeah, I am. He goes, I'm Danny. I'm like, cool. I mean, you get to see. He was like really excited. And he had this referee shirt on. And he was like, hey, good to meet you. What are you doing? He goes, I'm getting clobbered by dodgeball. I'm getting clobbered by dodgeball. I'm like, wow, most people are not excited about that. I felt like I would get excited. He goes, yeah, man, we're having a really great time. Because he's on mission because he put the mission field first. He could have been doing a lot of different things. There are people right now who are pouring into some of your children. They could be sitting here, but they say, I'm going to make that a priority. And I find that when we make a priority, we're less happy about the vines. We're not like totally, oh man, this vine I got. Come over. I want to give you a vine tour. Look at my vine. It's so amazing. This vine is just incredible. We don't care about the vine. Because we prioritize. We put God first. Seek first the kingdom of God, see? And I saw this electricity in his eyes, not because of getting clobbered by dodgeball, because he had 50 kids in the room. He was saying, man, those kids, they're important to me. I've talked to the guy in Romania, the pastor in Romania. He says, man, I said, hey, let me help you. No, this is my privilege. I talked to Felix. He was talking to Volodymyr this week. I said, hey, I don't want to burn you. He goes, best part of my day. Best part of my day. When people prioritize God and his work, when we do together, when there's someone that says, I know I had a successful business, but God is calling me to have different priorities. And the excitement that we see in you, David, the excitement that we see in the people around you, the impact you're going to make. Now, all of us are full-time missionaries wherever we work and play and live. And we're all Jonahs. Elizabeth Elliot said this. She said, if we really have too much to do, there are some items on the agenda which God did not put there, Martha. Let's submit the list to God and ask him to indicate which items must be deleted. There's always time to do the will of God. If we're just too busy to do that, we're too darn busy. Bum, 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 bum. Hey! So I'm going to end with a couple of videos today, very short ones. And people have asked, by the way, hey, how can we help Ukraine? If that's you, I'm not pushing this on you, but sometimes you're sitting in your living room. What do I do? How can I help? You can go to our giving page, by the way, and there's a place on there that says Ukraine. Okay, because I'm going to show you a couple of moving videos here. And I feel like that anywhere, whatever God calls us to do, it's a priority. Sometimes it's our time. Sometimes it's our presence, playing referee in a dodgeball. Sometimes it's our resources. So God calls us into different ways, okay? I want to show you a video. The first one is probably our main contact in Ukraine. His name is Pastor Alex. Pastor Alex has been you'll see him on the left. Carrie and I did a Zoom with him. His translator, we know very, very well, Anya, on the right. That is not the person. That's not the facial expression of a person in the midst of war. You'll notice that the lights are out because this was evening for them, and all lights are out because of the bombing. They had just been bombed the day before this Zoom call. And we're having this Zoom, and I just want you to look at the joy on their face. Let me tell you why. They're not happy about the war. They're broken like we are about the war. But Pastor Alex has been the most passionate, on fire person to see disciple making, Christ's Great Commission happen. In Ukraine, he's been to Russia, he's been to Finland, he's been to Spain, he's been to Estonia, saying, I'm going to answer the call that God has put on my life for the Great Commission. So he sends me this video. You'll hear Anya translating. And they're in what they call a block station. We call it a bunker. We call it a bunker. Take a look. That's their bunker.
Leonya, you see, at the block station we will have discipleship. Steve, hello.
Hello.
Welcome, dear friend. You see, this is time war. And my disciple and I are doing the exchange right here at the block station. There is time to talk about, think about, pray. And we not only serve people in the church together, but here today we are also taking duties at the block station to guard this territory. We bless you and thank you that we have such a tool today that we can use for the glory of the Lord and of course for greater friendship, relationships in the Lord. May God bless you and see you.
До встречи. До встречи.
Disciple making in a bunker. Wow. So what they've done is that they have rented a warehouse about this size, and they have gotten donations of food and medicine and all over the world. And they are not allowing the rain or the winds to stop them. because they are on mission and they have prioritized. So let me just show you a little bit of their work here in this warehouse.
Ми дуже благодарні, що нам допомагають. Ми біженці з Бучі єлі втекли. Случайно попали на електричку до Львова, яка їхала, вийшли в Вінниці. Нас тут приютили, і оце ми тут зараз отримали допомогу, продукти, шмотки якісь, бо що були, в тому і виїхали.
Наш пункт допомоги біженцям працює у Вінниці, але ми не тільки допомагаємо біженцям, які залишилися тут у Вінниці, але також і передаємо продукти на центри допомоги переселенцям в інші області.
Я дуже благодарю відкритий серця, які нам зробили допомогу. Я приїхав з Києва, метро Лева Брежна. Около нас там упав чат самоліта. Ми от туди швидко бігали, з регіону і дітей.
Дуже дякую вам, що ви є.
Ми, переселенці з міста Харкова, дякуємо велике за допомогу.